Well, as you know, I'm still picking away at my two stagecoaches that at one time used to run in Yellowstone Park. They don't anymore. The last year they ran in the park was 1916. After that, they went to the horseless or the white buses. So I put this rear assembly on last time, and I did take the time to catch up the 11 passenger. This is the 8. But I put this whole rear assembly with the rear seat on that 11 passenger as well. And if you remember in the past, whenever there is a screw that might be seen, they all get covered up with a filler. The old time they might have used what was called rough stuff, probably a lead-based filler, but I just use an automotive style filler today, and I fill all these heads. Anything that is not going to be exposed, like these on the side, they'll all get covered with the side panel. I don't have to worry about those. So I do have the seat frames cut out just in the rough for these rear seats. And as things go, as we're finding out, the things have to happen in a sequence in order to make things work in the proper sequence. These have spacers that come on the side of these rear curve frames. We've looked at these before, and they go from 1 3/4 to 1 5/8 or 1 5/8 to 1.5 however you measure these out. They need to go on as well, but the seat frames need to be assembled because they have to come to the side of this frame before these extensions can come down, and they have to sit on top of the seat frame. So I have to put the seat frames together and fit them in as well. But as you all know, I did bend this lateral frame that comes down the side on these coaches, and I would like to get that installed, but there's something else I have to do before I can do that. One reason I needed to get this rear frame assembly on is because this lateral has to come down, and then it gets jointed into this on the rear. But it also gets jointed into the front, and this frame here comes up to the driver's seat. Well, I have this just temporarily installed, but in order for this lateral to come in and get jointed into here, I need to install this and glue this permanently first. And as I'm doing these two together, I also cut out the framework for the seat base on this 11 passenger, and I need to do the same for it, of course, and the same up front. This is a little longer because it has two seats in the center, but this also needs to come in and get jointed into this front frame, which I also need to glue and assemble all the screws in it. So we've looked at this old driver's box framework in the past because it helps us remember what needs to be done. But this is the inside of that curved frame where the side body panel comes into it. And you can see we have screws about every 2.5 inches on the inside. So these side panels that are coming down on the side of the driver's box, you can see I need to put screws on the inside as I glue this and screw it to the main frames. So it's just another one of those cases that you kind of got to stay a step or two ahead of where I'm at in order to do what I'd like to do, which is install this side frame, but I need to do this framework and make it more permanent first. Well, I think it's time to see if my bent sides are going to actually work. These are the laterals that go down the spittle of the sides. This is for the 8 passenger and this is for the 11. And I bent them hopefully extra long or extra sharp, maybe I should say. We'll see how they turned out here. I like to kind of release these gradually. They're going to have some spring to them. Well, we'll go see how they fit up on the body themselves. There's a right and a left. I think we're on the right here. This one will be to the left. Hopefully my joints still work. Sometimes when I bend, these can compress a little bit. Look like this one's too bad here. I have kind of an extra bend in here, but this needs to be jointed in first as well. But this should give me the placement where that joint needs to be. And this front comes in pretty nicely as well. So that should be the location where that joint needs to be. This is going to get jointed in just like the back frame was. Gotta follow that angle. And that joint needs to be at that angle. So this fits a nice angle here to this angle, but to cut that joint, it's not going to be a square cut. So actually when I'm finished, this point here needs to come in to this point here. So this needs to be cut at kind of this angle, not a square angle. You can see the difference there. And I'm going to try to leave about a 1/2 inch here. I measure from the panel to this edge here. I'm right at 5/8 of an inch. And as I measure from the edge of that panel to this outside edge here, I'm 1 1/8 inches. So that joint needs to be a 1/2 inch. Somewhere about there to start. So the end of my joint should be about there. So I should go from my 1/2 inch to 0. And this disappears. And this needs to go in a 1/2 inch to receive this. And that should go about like so. Then that also will zero out at this point here. So I am scribed underneath, but I can't really see that. So I'm going to take it back off. See if I can figure out the rest of that joint. So this is where I laid up and scribed to, but this is actually where my cut needs to be. So I should actually cut it about there. And it's going to angle up to here. This should be my cut mark on the joint. And if that's the angle of my cut, it should be the same down here. And I have to remember which ones I cut on and which ones I don't. Well, this is another case where I kind of like using a hacksaw for some of this joint work. Not only does it have fine teeth, but the width of a hacksaw blade is a 1/2 inch. So that just becomes my depth gauge. So I should be able to bottom out my blade depth here when I'm just touching out here. I'm almost there. Just about my depth there, and I'm just starting to touch down here. And second verse, same as the first, huh? Right about there. I got a little more severe on my angles. This one's about right. I'm gonna have to clean that one up. I'm gonna knock that out and then I'll work on that angle there. Let's see how close we are. I'm a little narrow for the wood, but that's good. That allows me to shave this just a hair once I get that cut out. Well, this angle here can be deceiving. As I come in, it's actually going to pull away. So you see I've got my scribe mark right here. I'm actually going to cut that short of that. So I've got to put this joint into place and then bring this next joint into place as well. So I'm going to cut this strong and try to work that in. So you can see I am not quite an eighth from matching up, so I need to take another saw cut on that curved joint, and that will just shift this forward and allow this to go in to that joint. So I think we're going to fit up right there. If I take this back apart, because this has to go up at an angle, if I try to put this joint in first without first putting this joint in, I can't get it to fit into that configuration. That's where I have to start this one first, slide it into its position, and then bring this one in. Then it seems like it wants to work. And then just go down the row and get these other ones in position. And that's going to show me where this rear joint needs to be. And it'll be the same process. Find my inside curve. And it's going to have to be fitted in at an angle like so, just like the front one. So that gives us a nice curve into the framework of the driver's box. And it gives us a nice curve that kind of follows this seat frame that we did last time. I'll just touch these off with the file and make sure all these joints are flush after it sets up. So just when we're thinking that it doesn't get any more complicated than this joint work, it gets more complicated. These are at an angle, in a curve, and tapered. Interesting joints both front and back. And on this 8-passenger, there's 6 that have to kind of go together. And you notice how I had to kind of hold the center out, fit the ends in, and then bring the center into place. So it makes nice tight joints on the ends. On that 11 passengers, there's actually 9 joints that have to come together. It makes the front and rear joint a little easier because I have more flexibility through the center, but the same process will happen. It just has to fit 9 of them all together. So this is one side. I have 3 more sides to go. So these tapered, angled joints in the curve, I have 6 more to go. Appreciate you coming along. Thanks for watching.